Okay. Um, when we look at food preferences, values, and ideology, we find that there are some interesting things that correlate and that can lead us to some further interesting findings. So, if you give people a taste test and then you give them a political ideology test, and you find out that certain types of people like certain types of foods, it can lead to some bigger questions. It can one of the questions it leads to is why. Why do people who don't like or who can't who can't taste PTC. Why do they have certain kind of ideological values? So that's one of the things that does it. There is all kinds of variations in tastes and preferences. I mean, you may like sweet and I like salty kind of thing. There are variations in personality tendencies that there are some people who are very, very open and some people who are more reserved, that kind of thing. And there's variations in moral behaviors. Um, and so the variations in moral behavior, now, moral behavior, incidentally, is not talking about are you a moral person? Um, Moral behavior is kind of what forms the basis for your value system. Are you more worried about the world being a scary place, and so you form your values around the need for safety, or are you more worried, or are you more oriented that the world is a safe and loving place? In which case, might want to explore more, be more exploratory. If there are variations that match in taste and personality, or in taste and moral behavior, is it possible that we could trace these back to a single set of genes, and then from there, can this tell us some interesting things about um, other kinds of, can we use this to develop other kinds of hypotheses and theses? Um, so a um, a chemist for DuPont named Arthur Fox was mixing some PTEC in 1931, and it accidentally went airborne. A colleague of his mentioned that the PTC in the air tasted bitter, that he had a bitter taste in his mouth once this happened, but Fox himself couldn't taste it. And they later determined that the ability to taste the PTC was determined whether you had the genetics for it. People who are extremely sensitive to PTC tend to not like vegetables. Conservatives are significantly more likely than liberals to taste PTC. Um, now, we do know that food is shaped by nature and by nurture, but we have some kind of anecdotal incidents of this, like when George Bush Sr. Issued the order that he not be served broccoli anymore. And so we went over some of this, but I wanted to kind of go through the logical structure for all of this. Um, then Haidt and Graham, we've had presentations on Jonathan Haidt previously. But Haidt and Graham did some research that looked at taste preferences and moral behavior. And they were able to find that morals align with ideology. And so moral universals are rooted in intuitive ethics. So if these are the things that you just feel in your gut. Liberals have more of a concern for fairness, social justice, and reducing harm in general. This then tracks to their policy choices. Conservatives, on the other hand, value loyalty, authority, and purity. This again tracks onto their value sources. Left in general wants new and novel things. Conservatives want order, security, and tradition. And so when we put all of this together, when we put taste preferences and moral behavior preferences and ideology preferences, we can actually look at what's on somebody's dinner plate and tell a lot more about them than you might actually think. It also tells you why there are stereotypes in terms of food choices. Why you just assume that everybody in the vegetarian restaurant is, a liberal. It also helps us understand, like party alignments. And in the next video, I think we're going to talk about kind of how political parties, how political candidates are actually starting to use some of this preference, taste, moral behavior, ideology correlations to make actual political decisions.